In this moment, I invite each and every one of you to remind your body, mind, and spirit that love is why we are here. By taking a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, receiving the cool, calming oxygen that's around you, and as you release the breath, give back all that no longer serves you. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in, receiving the love of the universe. And as you release the breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own. For your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems, while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass, in seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
Grateful for the good in your life.
Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Good morning. I'm Jennings. I'll be giving the talk today. I'm Jennings. I've decided I'm going to go by last name. Does it? Yes. I had a kid in school tell me, a long time ago, obviously, he said, Jennings, that sounds like a butler. And that stuck with me ever, doesn't it? Well, Jennings. And I have one thing I want to say to Tom. Tom came up and asked me a question about baseball right before the start of the talk. And Tom, I just want to say God is the answer. Whatever the question may be, God is the answer. All right, welcome to Creative Life. I want to give a big shout out to Reverend Arthur Johnson. Yeah. Were you here last week? I don't know if you were or not, because I was not. But isn't he tremendous? And he's like that when he's not behind a microphone, too. He's like that, okay? He's like that. And by that, what I mean that, he's probably not high-octane energy all the time. You can't sustain that, you know. But I don't know anybody who longs for a world that works for everyone more than he does. And if you go to him and you say, I have this great idea for what I want to do with my life, he's going to be as enthused as you are. You know? That's who this man is. So I encourage you to get to know him. He's watching. He watches Sunday. He lurks like a lot of people who don't comment. We don't know who's out there. They peer around, a kind of Kilroy sort of thing over the fence, you know. But I mean, he chimes in. We know he's there. But anyway, Reverend Arthur Johnson. You can watch his service from last week on Facebook if you scroll down far enough, and certainly on YouTube. And we will have him back real soon, as well as our wonderful Reverends Lisa and David and Reverend to be Danielle and so on.
He has his own playlist.
And he has his own playlist on our YouTube. That's right. Yeah, and their playlists for each month and their playlists for the soul sessions that we have and many other things, all curated by Reverend Lisa. So what I'm doing here today, and he brought this up last week, is July was a series on the teachings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And toward the end of that series, there was only 4 essays, really, that we could get to, part of a 5th, compensation. But toward the end of that series, I asked from here if anybody would be interested in extending it into August. And first I heard crickets. And then eventually 4 people said yes, they would like the series to continue into August, and nobody said they wouldn't. So here we are. Ralph Waldo Emerson was born 220 years ago, and he is he's considered by many the greatest American philosopher, at least the first American philosopher, who delved into the idea of a spiritual understanding that was nature-based. There are four kinds of religion. We talk about this in some of our classes. There are four kinds of religion. There's natural, revealed, derivative, and syncretic. Okay? Natural religion is where you observe the world, the passing of the seasons, how nature is circular, how every ending is a beginning and beginning and ending, as I'll get to in a minute. And out of that, you pull together a spiritual philosophy. This is what the ancients did. They watched the night sky and they developed stories about the constellations and their movements and so on. And that's a natural religion. A revealed religion is a religion where there's a prophet and or a body of work, a document of some kind. And the prophet comes forward and says, well, here's how it is. And read this body of work. And this will explain things. And the prophet will say, this came to me. They all have a different, interesting story. They'll say, this came to me. It came to me in a dream, or it came to me in an epiphany moment, a theophanic moment where suddenly I just knew that I was in the presence of the divine. And then a derivative religion is one that is what it sounds like it is, where you've got a religious story going on, but somebody comes along and kind of adapts it. And this is oversimplifying what I'm about to say, but it's sort of how Buddhism came out of Hinduism. It's sort of how Christianity came out of Judaism. There was some revelation going on there too, but the story was adapted. And then finally, which I know you've been waiting for, the fourth of them is called syncretic or syncretistic, a syncretistic kind of religion. And folks, I need to let you know you're in one of those this morning, right here. What a syncretistic religion or syncretic religion does is it takes all of the evidence provided by the world's philosophers and spiritual sages from ancient times forward, and it looks for a common theme. Looks for a common theme that runs through all that material. So we are that. We are that. Emerson developed into that when he encountered the Vedas, when he encountered Eastern teaching, which came in the, I want to say late 1840s, early 1850s, and he lost his mind over them, over the beauty of the Upanishads. And he said, I've got to know more about this. Then all of a sudden he was hooked, and it so greatly broadened his worldview, which up to that point had been primarily Northern European, which was his heritage, So why we're talking about him here, why he's part of this whole scene, is that our founder, Ernest Holmes, read Emerson copiously. There was a book of Emerson's essays in his home when he was growing up. Emerson offers an ethical insight that balances the healing ideas that New Thought offers. The New Thought healing idea is that if you pray in faith believing that something will happen, it can restore you in body, mind, and soul. Well, that's great, but what if you don't need that right now? What if that's not an issue? And what is an issue is, getting up and going to work, is figuring out how to get along with your neighbor, is figuring out where your place is in society, even about money, even about commerce and the accumulation of wealth. What's the right thing for you to do? Emerson offers insights. Take them or leave them. And that was his position on these two. Here's what Emerson wasn't. Emerson was not a self-help writer. Okay? He didn't set out to do this. He didn't say, I'm going to write these essays so that you will have a better life. He wrote these things for himself. He gave addresses, yes, to rooms full of people, but he wrote this material as a reminder to himself. You know who else did that? Marcus Aurelius. If you've read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, everybody thinks, oh, he was a self-help writer. He's writing ancient Rome for. No, it was his diary, basically, to himself. He was thrust into leadership. He said, I don't know how to do this. So I've got to make some rules for myself. And he wrote all this stuff down, and it's lasted the test of time. So Emerson is writing to himself, and he's meditating. He's often meditating on what goes on. Now, he was also a highly educated academic. He came out of Harvard, and even in those days, Harvard was a thing. It was already 150 years old. Harvard was, or 170, I guess. But he was invited to speak famously at Harvard Divinity School, and that was the end of that for quite some time. He also spoke at Dartmouth College. He also spoke to captains of industry, as they used to call them, and politicians and so on. But when he spoke, when he offered these ideas to people, it was, again, his agenda was simply to remind everybody, you look too far away for reality. The power and the presence is within you. So as a highly educated person, he wanted to get this to the audience that was in front of him, which tended to be highly educated as well. One of his most famous bodies of works called The American Scholar, and then later he wrote another piece just called The Scholar, which I want to touch on today because he's talking to people who like to read. Remember, they used to have, what was it, in matchbooks and stuff? They said, we're looking for people who like to write. Do you remember that? You'd send in 15 cents or something, and they'd get something back and go on some list. They said, well, we're looking for people who like to read. And he would say to the scholar, read yourself. Read your soul. Read your soul. Before you fall in love with books. There'll be time enough for books. Reading, he said, of an improving nature is for your idle time. But right now, and I'm paraphrasing him. I have the actual quotes right here, but it's more fun to paraphrase him. And that's why we have this diligent and excellent research team sitting down here who are looking up the actual quotes to give you in the comments and also on YouTube. It's more fun to take some liberties with them. But I'm not going to go off the rails and just invent, because I hate that, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute, when you turn somebody into just a meme and you hash up their work. But what he's saying is that if you could know God without a mediator, without a veil, would you not wish to do that? Is not your time too precious to simply read the testimony of others who have had that experience? And this so often we do. Even today, we'll pick up a book by some spiritual writer, some psychologically adept person, and it was, oh, look at this experience that they had, and look how much they learned, and wow, good for them, and that's nice, and maybe I can get them to sign it for me. Maybe they're going to come someplace and give a lecture. I can look them up on the internet. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But time is short. Time is short for us. And all around us is the same intelligence, the same unconditional love that individual accessed and brought back to the group. It's been likened, not by Emerson, but by others, it's been likened to the idea of how in distant civilizations there would be at night a fire, a bonfire. Everyone would sit around and they'd eat and they'd probably make music and dance. And the idea for this was that it kept everybody cohesive as a society. And also, if you wandered too far away from the fire into the darkness, something was likely to grab you up and eat you. You know, things being what they were at the time. And this has embedded itself in the human psyche so that we feel like, we've got to find this circle of light where something is happening and we can't wander off into the darkness or we'll disappear. And yet, what the wise ones know is in the darkness is where the truth is found. It's in the darkness that, you know why? Because you carry your own light into the darkness. You discover your own light. I heard it said years ago, the light we seek is in the lantern that we carry. And we walk through this world and, where is truth and where are answers, and we've got this light like at our heart chakra, I suppose you'd say, emanating outward. You go into the darkness. He said, okay, this one I got to look up. He said, go alone. Refuse the good models, even those who are sacred in the popular imagination, and dare to love God without mediator or veil. Refuse the good models. Who were the good models he's talking about? Jesus Christ is one. Refuse the good models for now. We're not dishonoring them. We're not unworshiping them. We're not relegating them to the outer darkness. We're saying, I must find it myself. You know who else taught us that? Jesus Christ. Find it yourself. Find it within yourself. Find the divine. You know who else teaches that? Advaita Vedanta, the Hindu scriptural body of work that Emerson read. The ubiquity of the divine presence is everywhere. Those who see take off their shoes. You must find it yourself. You must find. And where is it? Is it on top of a mountain someplace? No, it's at the center of the self. And you go down to that. You go down to that. We learn that in going down into the secrets of our own minds, we have descended into the secrets of all minds. It's like there are these wells. I've told you the story before of the well in the cathedral, which was written up by Ira Progoff, and it's kind of long and complicated, and I'm not going to do it now. But the gist of the thing is there's an underground stream. You're a well to that underground stream. I am a well to that underground stream. Most of the time we don't go down the well. We stand up on ground level wishing there were an underground stream, wishing there were a stream of power that we could connect with that would be meaningful to us and helpful to us and so on, and asking each other if we've seen it, when in fact we are the well that descends to that stream. And as we descend to that stream, we bring that wisdom back up the well and deposit it next to it. And it becomes recognizable to others now until there's a conversation that's taking place in the world. That the power's never hidden from us, never has been. And that's what we mean when we say a world that works for everyone. It's part of what we mean. And it's what we're working toward now. But it begins with you. It begins with me. And one of the things I so enjoy about Reverend Arthur in his talk last week, he said, well, are we going to take action? Is it now? Are we going to do something? Are we going to do something about this? Or are we going to dance around in a ring and suppose? Are we going to imagine this and philosophize about that? Are we going to do something? What is the thing that we can do? Well, there are many things, of course, that we're called on to do in life. And we could jump up and go do them. But here's the hardest one. Do the work within yourself. Do the work within yourself. Emerson was a student of and advocate of spiritual psychology. Spiritual psychology. He said, I'm bringing this up, and I'm going to bring it up probably in every talk this month, just this great line. He says, in truth, there is no history. There is only biography. Think about that a moment. There's no history. There's only biography. There's the personal psychology of the individual who responds in some way. Maybe they decide to call together an army and start a war, or maybe they react to a volcano or a hurricane, They have some kind of, yes, they gather, nothing is done personally and privately entirely. They gather with other souls, but they do so from a motivation within themselves, just like you and I do. What is my motivation here? An actor handed a script. We talked about this a few weeks ago. handed a script will say, what's my motivation in this scene? Am I angry? Am I happy? Am I this? Am I that? What is my motivation? We ask ourselves within ourselves, what is my motivation? What do I want out of this situation? And why do I want it? And why do I think you have it? Why do I think I have to go through these certain steps to have something occur? Because somebody else has said I do. And so now I'm reading their story. I'm reading their testimony of the ages. No matter how beautifully put it is, no matter how complex or elegant it is, it's still not the absolute and final truth, because there is no absolute and final truth. Everything is existential in the moment. I don't know how this is going to work. People argue. You know, we argue for our limitations. That's another Emerson line. We argue for your limitations and they're yours. We do this. We say, well, I can't possibly do that. Say, well, how about if you move from point A to point Z? Or point A to point 5,296. It's like, wait, that's not even on the same scale. Well, if the universe doesn't have a problem with that, why do you and I, How would it be? Oh, one of my favorite stories is that individual came to one of our spiritual teachers in this organization, 75, probably 75 years ago. He wrote this up. Guy comes in, he says, I need such and such to happen. Spiritual counseling, so I need such and such to happen by next week, or I'm in big trouble. Always felt to me like he was a loan shark involved here. I don't know, but maybe I watched too many noir movies, But he's saying to this spiritual counselor, I need something to happen. I need this thing to happen, and I need it to happen by then. And the spiritual leader that he's talking to says, would it be all right with you if your problem just went away? And it didn't involve money changing hands, and there was no time for it. Would it be all right with you if your problem just went away? And the guy argued. It can't possibly go away. It has to happen this way and this way. And they went back and forth for a very long time, and it's all written up in this little book. And finally, the guy asking capitulated, probably just to get out of the conversation. And so, all right, it'd be all right with me. And everything cleared up. You just never know, do you? But we look at life and we say it has to go through a certain particular process. Emerson tells us nature works by the short ways. It works by the path of least resistance, not the path of greatest resistance. This is different than what most of us have learned. Most of us in a spiritual setting in the Western world have been taught that there's something fundamentally wrong with us from the get-go. And we've got to work it off, and it's going to take a really long time, probably well past this lifetime. And even then, it probably won't be enough. It probably won't be enough. And so, what's your motivation? Often it's to look like we're doing the work, in case something's watching us, rather than actually doing the work. And what is the work? Peeling back the layers of doubt and self-blame and self-hatred that we have accumulated like filth, that's settled like soot, that's settled on us from this idea that God could make somebody and be ashamed of them. And be disappointed in them. Our work, that has never been true. That God could do that or has done that. That's not the problem. The problem is we've believed it. We've let it seep into our consciousness, and that's the work that we have to do. And we do this best not simply by attacking individual issues. Like when we say, well, I'm going to build my self-esteem. You've heard of the house built on sand. Okay? It's very hard to build your self-esteem if you don't have some kind of a new theology back of it about your maker. Because it's always going to be in relationship to that. It's always going to play off of that in some way. So what we're really doing is we're getting a fresh look at God. Not through somebody else's voice, not through somebody else's book. Emerson says go outside, go outdoors. Now, practically speaking, where we are in this part of the world, it's very hot right now. So I suggest you go out early morning, late at night. Had the super moon the other night. We're going to have the end of this month a blue moon on a Wednesday, which is the second full moon. It's the 13th full moon in a year, or there are 13 in a year, and 2 occur in a calendar month, and so on. We go out and look at nature, but nature is metaphorical as well as actual, so it's not simply a walk in the woods. He wrote a lot about walking in the woods. You know why? He lived near woods. Okay? Concord, Mass, and environs. But look at nature, how it operates. How, he says, as the solidest rocks are made up of invisible gases, as the world is made of thickened light and arrested electricity, so we know that ideas are the parents of people and things. There was never anything that did not proceed from a thought. So here's a suggestion for the coming week till we gather again and go over some more. Next week, I think we'll focus on his essay on worship, which is brilliant. They're all brilliant, if you like them, if you like this kind of thing, you know. Pick up a rock. I was at a workshop one time, and they handed out rocks. This was in the 70s. And they gave us each a rock. And they said, be with your rock. This was in the 70s. Did I mention that? And so we sat, 30 or so of us, ministers. No, it must have been the 80s. I was a minister. We sat in this room, 30 of us, holding a rock, about the size of a fist. No further instructions were given but to hold the rock and be with the rock. And the facilitator left the room. And we sat there with our rocks. And I went through, I know I've told you this story before, but I tell these stories repeatedly, not every week, that would be dumb, you know, and unprofessional. But I tell these stories at some frequency, with some frequency, because it's a good story and it's illustrative, and I think it'll help, and somebody in the room hasn't heard it. So anyway, I sat there with the rock for 30 minutes. And I went through, I can't speak for the others, but I went through the full spectrum of human emotions sitting there with that rock. I was bored, I was angry, I was this. Then I finally started paying attention to the rock. I imagined how long the rock had been on Earth, where the rock came from. I created a whole biography of the rock in my head, okay? And by the time the thing was, and then I loved the rock, and then it was great. And then I started to worry about, do I have to give the rock back? At one point, I wanted to throw the rock. And by the time this workshop wound down, I and the rock were one. The rock was an extension of me. It was part of me. And I didn't have to possess it, so I could give it back in the rock basket that got passed around, you know, okay? And it was not about possession. It was not about domination. It was not even about relationship. It was about oneness. And the whole thing, of course, was a wonderful exercise. It was making a point. It was making a point. If you stop, don't just stop and smell the roses. Stop and be with them. When you smell the roses, you're looking at them as a delivery system of one thing. This is a rose. I expect it to smell like a rose. It'd jolly well better smell like what I expect a rose to smell like, and then I'm going to rank it among all the roses I've smelled and where this one comes in. You know, Because this is what we do, and I'm going to turn it into a useful, and then I'm going to pluck the rose and give it to somebody so that I can see the look on their face. And you see what I'm saying? Everything becomes a delivery system. Everything becomes a means to an end rather than a fullness within itself. And so to stop and be with the rose and want nothing from it, and to stop and be with another person and want nothing from them, and not want them to like you and not want them to dislike you, and not have any oar in the water about any of that, but simply just to be. Simply just to be. And I'll leave you with this one, and this will come up again too. But he says, when you do this, and this is often, this line I'm about to give you is often interpreted in a negative way. In fact, may get a giggle out of you just because it sounds like that's what it means. When he says that what you are speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you are saying. What you are speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you are saying. And often when people hear that, they think, oh, it means, somebody's a phony. Blah, 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 blah. You're saying all of this stuff, but I get who you are in this judgmental kind of way. Let's turn it in another direction where I don't have to hear the words. There are no words. The words fail. The words are, he says, a finite attempt at expressing infinite mind. A finite stab at expressing infinite mind. What you are speaks so loudly, and what you are is God becoming. What you are is a godling. What you are is the experience of the divine having an experience of itself at this time by means of you. And when we get that from each other, we'll be telepathic, man. We won't have to explain and back and fill and do all the things that we do in human communication. We'll just get each other. You know the word grok? Have you ever heard that? It's from Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein. This was big back in the day. And to grok somebody, there's a similar thing in Avatar. What is it? I see you or I feel you or something like that. Somebody will remember. But it's to know. It's to know the essence. It's to know the essence. So in the week to come, what I encourage you to do is explore nature, explore your own nature, explore your own actions and reactions and why you do what you do and how you feel about yourself. And whenever you feel like you're not enough, you don't match up, you don't have what it takes, you can call a friend, you can call me, you can do lots of things, and best of all, you can go to the mind that made you, the mind that made you, and let it remind you nothing was left out. Let's know together now, one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere radiant, everywhere manifesting, and on this beautiful day. And yes, we'll call it a beautiful day, and we have judgments about it. I realize that so many Sundays we're up here and it's storming outside, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or it's too this, But this is a beautiful day. Why? Because it's today. Because it's a starting gate for the next lap, the next round. Right now. We know what we know, and we know that we're enough, and we know that we have enough to thrive. We have enough information, we have enough supply, we have enough friends, although more are always welcome. Great love surrounds us. People care about us. People have their eyes on us, wanting to make sure we're all right as we watch them too. In this high and holy moment, the Spirit of the One, life, is expressing enthusiastically, powerfully through each one of us. Who knows where it will lead in the coming week? Who knows what we might be inclined to begin? There are always surprises around the corner. Even some endings that reveal themselves as beginnings. For there's a circularity, a balance, and a compensation to life on this material plane. And we are up for it. We voted to be here. Here we are. We have what it takes because we are what it takes. For this knowing, the way that it manifests in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
And for everyone else, welcome back. Thank you for being here yet again. Thank you for providing your love, your energy, your presence, your financial support. We gratefully appreciate anything and everything that you give to this center. It is because of what you give to us that we can be here providing this spiritual teaching and service to you. So thank you so much. And I invite you now to say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
Now, if you are in the room, you may not have noticed, but if you are online, you have probably noticed that we have a light that is winking at us. Exactly. So I'm going to acknowledge that light. I'm going to acknowledge that light for one reason. Because coming up this Wednesday, we are having a memorial service for, I may not make it through this without crying. We are having a memorial service for a teacher of mine. A wonderful lady who one day when I stomped my foot and said, I've got to find God, she sent me here. And this is the kind of stuff that she would do. I know her. So Pat, if that's you, stop blinking my light. All right. I acknowledge you. I love you. We are going to love all over you on Wednesday. You have my attention. All right? So, and in the knowing of that, just because, like I said, I'm acknowledging it. Sometimes it's just a cry for love. In fact, most things are just a cry for love. I want to acknowledge the women's, I'm going to pronounce it correctly, football, or as we call it here, soccer team. They just got eliminated in a down-to-the-wire shootout with Sweden. So they are out. And so we are now turning our attention to rooting for Jamaica because this is their first year in the World Cup. So just want you to keep rooting for the ladies, even though our ladies are out. There's a couple of teams in there. I think Morocco's the other team that it's their first year in. So we're still rooting for you, ladies. Good on you. All right. Of course. But you're going to have to ask yeah. My husband's been paying far more attention. I'm just like, wait, what's happening? And I played soccer as a child. So, football. That's what I said, football. That's why I started out with football. But, I'm talking to mostly Americans, right? They have a different idea of football. Even though they they only touch it with their foot once and play mostly with their hands. And soccer, we're not allowed to touch it with our hands except unless you're a goalie. So, I can see Tom and Carthel talking about football now. Okay. But what I want to do is release you into your day. So I'm going to encourage you to take a nice deep breath. Breathe it all the way down. Relax as you release the breath. Take one more nice deep breath. And just breathe in all of the love that we have heard today. And as you relax and release, set anything down that does not look like love. And know with me that there is one life. There is one power. There is one presence. There is one love. And each and every one of us live that life. We are divine channels for that power, and for that love, and for that presence. And all of the good in the world comes through us. So whatever good it is that you are seeking, know that it is seeking you. Merely stretch forth your hand, know it in divine truth, and know that it is coming, because it already exists in the mind of God. The same mind you use. And that is the truth of our being. And so I am knowing a smooth and easy week. I am knowing peace for those who seek it. I am knowing comfort for those who need it. And I am knowing great joy for all of us. Joy is a quality of God. Therefore, it is a quality of you. No matter what is going on in the world, you deserve joy. Please make room in your life for joy. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. And I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me this. And I am grateful for this community. I am grateful for our ministers. I am grateful for our practitioners. I am grateful for our musicians. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that lets us send this out to the nether reaches. And I am grateful because grateful is just another word for love. And gratitude, my friends, will get you everywhere. And so I relax and know that it is done in love, in law, and so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it. I use it. And I love it.
And I love
And so it is.
it. And so it is.